Coming up on Arirang News. The leaders of South Korea and the United Arab Emirates sign a comprehensive economic partnership agreement, Seoul's first bilateral free trade agreement with a Middle East country to expand cooperation in key areas from energy and defense to artificial intelligence. North Korea flies the largest ever number of balloons filled with trash and excrement across the border to the south. Seoul criticizes Pyongyang's action, saying it violates international law and seriously threatens citizens. South Korea's already low fertility rate breaks another unwanted record in the first 3 months of this year, with the number of babies born in March falling below 20,000, the fewest ever for that month. Good evening. It's 9 p.m. here in Seoul. Thank you for joining us on Arirang News. We start with United Arab Emirates President Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan's state visit to South Korea. The leaders of the two countries signed dozens of deals to boost their cooperation in key strategic areas, from energy to AI. Our senior correspondent Oh Soo-young leads us off.
South Korea and the United Arab Emirates have inked a bilateral free trade agreement and agreed to bolster cooperation on investment, energy, nuclear power and defense, while jointly advancing artificial intelligence across all areas. This came at a bilateral summit in Seoul on Wednesday between President Yoon and UAE President Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan. Just 1 year and 4 months after their previous summit in Abu Dhabi, a total of 19 bilateral deals and documents were signed to enhance their special strategic partnership. First, the two countries signed their comprehensive economic partnership agreement, South Korea's first bilateral free trade agreement with a Middle East country, which will lower tariffs on all goods traded by more than 91% within a 10-year term. Setting out 14 areas of cooperation, including supply chains, energy, digital and biotechnology. The trade deal is expected to expand market access for South Korea's online gaming firms and medical services. As the two countries proceed with their agreement last year to cooperate on strategic investment, with the UAE President pledging $30 billion into Korean firms, the two sides inked a deal to broaden the channels for investment to involve more non-state institutions. Some $6 billion of investment opportunities in Korea are also under review. Also, to enhance energy security and transition to the post-oil era. The two sides agreed to bolster their cooperation in the traditional and clean energy sectors. South Korean firms signed a letter of intent with the Abu Dhabi National Oil Company, providing the basis for them to receive orders for at least 6 LNG ships worth around $1.5 billion. The two governments, meanwhile, signed memorandums of understanding to increase joint crude oil storage and establish a support system for producing clean hydrogen. Based on the construction of the Baraka nuclear power plant, Korea's first export of a homegrown commercial nuclear plant, the two sides agreed to level up collaboration in nuclear energy. Furthermore, they will continue discussions to strengthen long-term and strategic defense and cooperation on defense technology. A South Korean presidential official said the two sides are working on increasing the UAE's defensive capabilities through various arms talks. Furthermore, the two countries will jointly foster innovation in artificial intelligence through corporate research and talent exchanges.
Based on our special strategic partnership forged in 2018, the two countries over the past year have focused on 4 main areas of cooperation. Through this state visit, the scope is being expanded to cooperation on cutting-edge technology, including artificial intelligence.
Based on their evolving bilateral relations, the two sides will jointly expand into third countries, including African nations, in the fields of energy infrastructure and nuclear power, as well as strengthen cooperation on climate action on a multilateral level. With the UAE being South Korea's only special strategic partner in the Middle East, Yoon's office said it hopes the Leaders' Summit will provide tangible outcomes that improve people's livelihoods in both South Korea and the UAE. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
Well, if you work or live in the Seoul area, you might have wondered about the loud jet noises around lunchtime today. The fighter jets were the Black Eagles, as President Yoon called on them, and more than 500 military personnel to greet the UAE President during the welcoming ceremony. This was the biggest such ceremony he's held for a foreign leader. Our correspondent Kim Do-yeon tells us more.
500 members of the AK unit, a South Korean unit stationed in the UAE, are lined up, a symbol of the brotherhood between the two nations. They are part of President Yoon Suk-yeol's welcome for the United Arab Emirates President Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan at his office on Wednesday.
Before the summit in the morning, there was a welcoming ceremony for President Mohammed. President Yoon and the First Lady showed the utmost courtesy to receive him.
Once inside the presidential office grounds in traditional uniforms and with traditional instruments, they give a military escort to the UAE president. And as he enters into the main part of the Yongsan presidential office, 21 rounds of blank artillery fire. At the main building's front door, President Yoon greets the UAE leader. The highlight of the event may have been the Black Eagles. The South Korean Air Force aerobic team flew across the sky a few times to showcase their skills with smoke trails in the colors of the South Korean and UAE flags. Lastly, children were invited to help greet the UAE president before the two leaders head for a summit. The top office has previously said that the welcoming events would be the biggest by the Yoon administration yet, to match the scale that the UAE displayed when President Yoon was in Abu Dhabi for a state visit in January 2023. The two leaders actually started their engagements on Tuesday night. The first was a stroll through the 15th century Changdeokgung Palace in Seoul, where they watched a traditional court dance and had tea before moving to the former presidential office of Cheongwade for a dinner banquet. And the top office said it is notable how Sheikha Mariam bint Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan, deputy chairperson of the Presidential Court for National Projects, a daughter of the UAE president, joined these engagements. This is the first time she has joined her father in an overseas trip.
In January last year, during President Yoon's state visit to the UAE, First Lady Kim Kwon-hee attended the official welcoming ceremony. This time, the UAE president is accompanied by his daughter during informal meetings and social events, which clearly demonstrates the special significance the UAE places on their visit to South Korea.
The top office says by the time the UAE president leaves South Korea, Yoon and he will have spent more than 5 hours together, excluding the main summit, saying these were also opportunities for deep conversations. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
Shifting gears, North Korea has sent hundreds of balloons full of trash across the inter-Korean border, showing its discontent against anti-Pyongyang campaigners in the south. More than 200 of them have been found across the country, sparking strong condemnation. Our defense correspondent Choi Min-jung reports.
North Korea has sent its largest ever number of balloons carrying trash and excrement across the border to the south. As of 4 p.m. Wednesday, the South Korean military found over 260 balloons presumed to be sent by North Korea. Attached to the balloons were bags filled with excrement and trash. The balloons were first discovered on Tuesday night and were shortly found across the country, including in Seoul, Gyeonggi-do, Gangwon-do, and Gyeongsang-do provinces. The Joint Chiefs of Staff strongly condemned North Korea's actions.
These actions by North Korea clearly violate international law and pose serious threats to the safety of South Korean citizens. All responsibility arising from the North Korean balloons lies entirely with North Korea, and we sternly warn North Korea to immediately stop its inhumane and low-grade actions.
The military added that it is working closely with relevant agencies, including the Ministry of the Interior and Safety, the United Nations Command, and the police, to secure the public's safety. An expert said that measures should be implemented to prevent this from escalating into a military conflict.
If this situation escalates further, it could lead to a military conflict. The Korean government needs to manage the situation better now than ever before. I believe it would be necessary for the United Nations Command, which manages the armistice agreement, to intervene appropriately as well.
The balloons also pose a threat to citizens near the inter-Korean border.
There are considerable concerns regarding the safety of residents in the border area, so I think efforts must be made between North and South Korea to quickly resolve this issue.
On Sunday, North Korea warned of such retaliatory action against the distribution of anti-Pyongyang leaflets in border areas sent by North Korean defectors and conservative activists in South Korea. North Korea previously sent balloons carrying waste in 2016, damaging vehicles and houses. Choi Min-jang, Arirang News.
South Korea's already low fertility rate breaks another unwanted record in the first 3 months of this year, with the number of babies born in March falling below 20,000, the fewest ever for that month. Our An Sung-jin has the latest.
The total fertility rate in South Korea dropped to the lowest first quarter figure on record this year. According to Statistics Korea on Wednesday, the figure, which measures the average number of children born to a woman over her lifetime, continued its downward trend and fell to 0.76 in the first quarter. The first time it has fallen into the 0.7 range for Q1.
Normally, the figure is highest in the first quarter, which suggests that for this year, the overall birth rate might be lower than last year. A change in policies and social conditions will be needed for a rebound.
For the number of newborns in South Korea, the figure fell to its lowest for the month of March compared to the year before. Despite a slight rebound from February, the figure fell by 7.3% on-year, reaching nearly 19,700. However, the expert mentions that the second quarter might be different.
Although there is a decline up to March, the figures for the second quarter might be different as the on-year figure goes up in April. If we do see a rebound for this month as well, it may be attributed to the change in government policies last summer and an increase in the number of marriages.
The number of babies born fell on-year in all of the 17 administrative divisions in the country except for Sejong City, which saw an increase of 20 additional newborns. An official from Statistics Korea said that with relatively younger couples concentrated in Sejong City, despite the overall birth rate plunging, this area saw a slight increase. Meanwhile, the number of deaths rose by 7.6% to 31,000. The death rate went up in all regions across the country. The same official noted that the aging population takes up most of the deaths and added that with 2022 seeing a high death rate, the climb for this year is attributed to a base effect of a relatively low figure last year. The final figures are to be announced in August next year once unreported data is accounted for. An Sung-jin, Arirang News.
In related news, South Korea's youth population is projected to halve in the next 40 years, reflecting the ongoing youth demographic decline. The number of multicultural students, on the other hand, has tripled in the past decade. This is according to the Ministry of Gender Equality and Family on Wednesday. In this year's youth statistics, the ministry said there are 7.82 million people between the ages of 9 and 24, accounting for 15.1% of the entire population. The ministry said that the youth population is forecast to decrease to 4.1 million by 2060, roughly half its current level. Meanwhile, the number of multicultural students last year was up 7.4% compared to the previous year, accounting for 3.5% of all students. Now, also on the local front, it's been well over 3 months since junior doctors walked out of their workplaces to protest the government's plan to expand the number of future doctors. With growing patient concerns, the administration is once again urging them to return to work, saying those who do so will face fewer penalties. Our Park Gun-woo has more.
On the 100th day since junior doctors left their workplaces en masse, the government reiterated its calls for them to return, noting some have already done so. At a briefing following a meeting of the Central Disaster and Safety Countermeasure Headquarters on Wednesday, Second Vice Minister for Health and Welfare, Bang Min-soo, also said doctors who return now will face fewer penalties.
Don't hesitate and return to your hospitals for your patients, your fellow medical staff, and also your future. The government will do its best to keep penalties on those who return at a minimum. There will be firm differences between those who return and those who do not.
Nearly 700 trainee doctors working at 100 major training hospitals were reported to be at their workplaces as of Tuesday, up by 122 compared to the month before. When looking at all 211 training hospitals nationwide, around 7% of the total number of trainee doctors were working. During the briefing, Vice Minister Park also thanked medical staff for carrying on with their duties, saying they helped prevent a medical disruption from occurring. The same day, however, an official from the Korean Society of Emergency Medicine shared the difficulties medical staff faced in running emergency rooms for 24 hours a day without the junior doctors. The official said the number of doctors available for work had shrunk by 1/3 recently, as those doctors also took care of ward shift duties, where it used to be a rotation of 2 to 3 people in a 24-hour period. Accordingly, the official said medical staff have been barely operating emergency rooms, adding that the KSEM cannot guarantee how long this can continue due to the heavy workload. Also on Wednesday, Prime Minister Han Duck-soo said a cabinet meeting the day before signed off an additional $56 million to be given to hospitals to bolster their emergency medical systems. That's on top of the $94 million already given to support recruitment, salaries, and running costs. The additional amount will be used to support extra pay and educational fees for nurses who have been a big help filling in for the doctors under the supervision of consultants. Park Gon-woo, Arirang News.
Shifting gears, the cabinet has approved a revision to an act passed by the National Assembly yesterday, which extends the support period for those affected by one of the country's worst maritime disasters 10 years ago. Meanwhile, 4 other contentious bills were rejected by the president. Our political correspondent Lee Si-hoo explains.
South Korea's cabinet on Wednesday passed a revision to the Special Act on Remedy for Damage caused by the April 16 Sewol Ferry Disaster, meant to extend the support period for those affected by the 2014 tragedy. The revision extends the period of medical expense assistance for those affected by the accident by 5 more years. In the original version of the act and its enforcement decree, survivors of the disaster and family members of victims could receive support for related medical needs for a period of 10 years, which ended on April 15th of this year. The opposition lawmakers at the parliament proposed a change to this, citing the disaster's lasting physical and psychological impact. Then on Tuesday, they passed the revised version of the act amid a ruling party walkout during what was the 21st National Assembly's final plenary session. The cabinet on Wednesday passed this revision, but suggested a presidential veto for 4 other bills that were unilaterally passed by the opposition camps at the National Assembly, including one expanding support for real estate fraud victims. Prime Minister Han Duck-soo explained the cabinet's decision, citing the need to ensure, quote, financial viability of the government and to prevent a potential burden on the people. Within several hours, President Yoon vetoed the 4 bills as requested by the cabinet. Lee Si-hoo, Arirang News.
The union at South Korea's tech giant Samsung Electronics will stage a walkout next week for the first time since its establishment after wage negotiations fell through. During a press conference on Wednesday, officials of the National Samsung Electronics Union declared that it had advised its members to take collective leave on June 7th. They cited the company's, quote, neglectful attitude toward workers, saying demands for higher pay were not met and negotiations that have been held since January had made little headway. The union has some 28,000 members, which is around a fifth of the firm's workforce. Now on Wall Street. Tuesday's trading session ended with Nvidia's another record-breaking close, sending the Nasdaq above 17,000 for the first time in history. Our Moon Hae-ryun has the numbers.
The tech-heavy Nasdaq hit a new record high on Wall Street on the back of Nvidia gains on Tuesday. Artificial intelligence chipmaker Nvidia stocks jumped 7% to reach new heights, boosting the Nasdaq above 17,000 for the first time in history as it closed at 17,019.88. This follows the firm's posting of its quarterly earnings last week, where it reported a fivefold jump in revenue in the first quarter of the year for its data center sales, including AI chips used by companies such as Google, Microsoft, and OpenAI. Nvidia's share price also skyrocketed with the firm's forecast that second quarter profits are set to be above Wall Street expectations. The firm's shares have more than doubled in value so far this year, and further progress is expected with the release of its next new chip architecture model, Blackwell, later this year. Elsewhere on Wall Street, there were more disappointing results as the yield on the US 10-year Treasury showed a slight rise. Higher yields can have a negative impact on stocks as they tighten financial conditions and push investors towards bonds as a safer asset. The S&P 500 index barely rose by 1.32 points, while the Dow Jones Industrial Average ended trading at 38,852.86, down over 0.5% from the previous trading day. The anticipation of interest rate cuts by the U.S. Central Bank has led Wall Street to hit new records recently, with the next Federal Open Market Committee meeting to come in just over 2 weeks. As investors await the announcement of U.S. inflation data for April later this week, eyes are on how it could affect the Fed's next move for the benchmark interest rate. 문혜련, Arirang News.
At the end of May, the seasonal clock is gradually pointing towards summer. Temperatures in Seoul today rose to 27 degrees Celsius, and it's already a little hot outside. In other areas, there are many places with summer heat close to 30 degrees. The summer heat will remain. Most areas will be above 25 degrees during the daytime. UV rays may continue to be high in many parts of the country tomorrow. Even though daytime heat will continue across the country tomorrow, the daily temperature difference is huge in the morning and evening. As the temperature drops quickly when the sun goes down, make sure you carry outwear with you when you go out. Tomorrow, Seoul, Gwangju, and Busan will start off at 17 degrees. It will move up to 26 in Seoul and Chuncheon, Gyeongju 29 degrees. It is expected to rain on Jeju Island on Friday and Gangwon-do province over the weekend. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world.
Well, that is all for this newscast tonight. Thank you for watching. We'll be back with the latest news at 9 a.m. tomorrow with New Day at Arirang. Good night.